This
together with
conference will
all
now
other
be
health
recorded.
professionals, we will be recorded, continues to actively work to tackle AMR. Therefore, One Health is the right approach. A set of joint efforts of many different professionals and disciplines at the local and global level to achieve health for people, animals, and the environment. One Health implies also managing resources on-farm and post-farm level in a sustainable way, as the planetary boundaries and resources themselves are limited. A modern veterinary professional needs to take into account all of these. Our profession and the society we live in are changing rapidly, and FVE aims to follow this dynamic situation, ensuring that every veterinarian keeps pace with the occurring changes and the challenges they pose. At farm level and along the food chain, vets are already key players, but we can certainly do better. To be leaders, we need to embrace innovation and technology at all levels and make the best use of digitalization and new technologies when providing our services. The Farm to Fork strategy issued by the Commission and its targets pushes us to be innovative, contributes to shaping the future of EU livestock farming, and be the best advisors for EU farmers and our clients. As such, today's webinar wants to show and take advantage of how veterinarians are placed centrally in advancing sustainability in the agri-food sector and the profession. Dear colleagues, I wish you a great webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rens, for these words. Then I would like to give the floor to Maurizio Ferri. Maurizio Ferri is an official veterinarian from Italy. He is currently our chairman of the Food Safety and Sustainability Working Group. He is an expert also on auditing inspection in food premises. And he represents also FEV at the EFSA stakeholders group on emerging risks. And he's also sitting in the technical group of the Commission on Food Security. So as soon as the presentation is available, Maurizio, you can tell us what you think about sustainability and what does it mean, and how veterinarians are engaged.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you for the introduction. I want to be sure if you hear me well.
We hear you very well.
Yeah?
Go on.
Okay, right. So good morning, everybody, dear colleagues. It's a great pleasure and honor to speak here today about the veterinary contribution and commitment to sustainable food system on behalf of of course, the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe. Next slide. For those who are not familiar with the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, so this is an organization, I would say, an umbrella body for veterinary association from almost 39 European countries. And the FEV represents through 4 sections, veterinarians working in the different fields of the profession, such as veterinary practitioner, state officer, food safety, and veterinary public health. I think this slide is missing something. Okay, right. This is the 4 sections, and also vets working in education, research, and industry. So the members of the FVE are National Veterinary Association or chambers, and through the FV, they represent almost 300,000 vets in 39 countries. So the mission, of course, is to improve animal health, animal welfare, public health, and protect the environments. The FV is dedicated to promote the veterinary profession and also deliver the professional responsibility to the best standards, and also ensure that the veterinary expertise is recognized and valued by society. Next slide. So the structure of the FV is composed of the boards. You can see the picture of the boards of the director. It's just the Rens just give a speech, is the president. And then we have the fourth section I just mentioned before, and we have the FEV secretariat, and we have 4 very vibrant working groups. The first one is the Food Safety and Sustainability Working Group, and I'm chairing this working group, FEV working group, and then we have 3 other working groups: animal welfare, the medicine, and statutory bodies. So, of course, to promote the role of the vets, we try to talk to the institution, policymakers, decision makers, and also we liaise with the different international agencies inside and outside the European Union. So we talk with EMA, EFSA, ACDC, we talk with the OIE, FAO, FAO, WHO, and also we participate in different working group or expert group, and of course we follow the legislative developments in animal health and food safety in Europe. Next slide. So I think that sustainability is the core topic of this working group. The members of this working group of food safety and sustainability are appointed by the FV. You can see on the left the composition. I'm chairing this group, and I recently replaced the previous chairperson, our colleague Simon Doherty, will really reinforce the concept of sustainability in the FEV discourse. And we have a terms of reference which include, the main topics like the role of veterinary in circular economy, the farm to fork strategy and Green Deal. We try to campaign and promote the role of the vets in protecting public health. And with this group, but also with other groups, we try to connect to different stakeholders. And Francesco just mentioned that we are a member of the EFSA stakeholders discussion group on emerging risk, and also I represent the FVE in the European Food Security Crisis Preparedness and Response Mechanism, which is established in the framework of the Commission contingency plan to increase the, I would say, the overall resilience of the EU food supply chain, particularly in this context with the Ukraine war, with large and uncertain impact on food supply chain, but also with the risk of introduction on animal disease from Ukraine to other member countries. So we are following this situation. And this group, EFCCM, is composed, of course, of food supply chain experts coordinated by the Commission. Next slide. So the sustainability is the center of the EU institutional setting with the Farm to Fork strategy adopted by the Commission on 2020, which is the core of the Green Deal. The objective is to create a fair, healthy and environmentally friendly food system. And also we have this biodiversity strategy 2030. So these two strategies are not separated, but are mutually reinforcing and also bring together the nature, farmers, business, and people, health society, and also health planet. In this regard, this strategy emphasizes the importance of animal health and animal welfare. They are safeguarded by the veterinary professions. And also the strategy addresses the challenges of improving food security, reducing food waste, tackling the food fraud, and all activities that fall under the commitment of the veterinary professions. And all these actions require investment in research, innovation, technology, and also advisory service. So the biodiversity strategy, the main objective is to protect the nature and reverse the degradation of ecosystem, and also is linked to all the above aspects. So the overall objective is to increase society resilience to future threats such as climate change, forest fire, food insecurity, or disease outbreak, and also including by protecting wildlife and fighting illegal wildlife trade. And the veterinary profession is central to this action. Next slide. Today, I would like to recall, some definition that belongs to any discourse on sustainability. Definition of food system from the International Food Policy Research Institute include all the aspects of feeding of people, from growing, harvesting, packaging, transporting, processing, consumption, but also include this definition the enabling policy environment, and also define the cultural norms around food. And the food chain is just transferring food energy from the producer through a series of organisms. And sustainability. So sustainability, it means undertaking the current farming and agriculture in a way that meets the current needs, but without sacrificing the ability to meet the need of future generation. Next slide. And we have this flagship initiative of the Farm to Fork strategy mentioned by Francesco. The aim is to create an horizontal legislative framework for sustainable food system. So the purpose of this initiative is to accelerate and facilitate the transition to sustainable food system on the EU market by promotion of policy coherence at the EU level, but also national level. This proposal will be adopted by the end of 2023, following, I would say, a broad consultation and impact assessment carried out by the Commission. You can see on the right the Inception Impact Assessment, which is already available in the Have Your Say platform and of the Commission. And so the stakeholders are invited to make comments and to give their, the reflection of these initiatives. Next slide. So the One Health and sustainabilities are among the 5 key priorities of the FEV strategy until 2025. So we have also, we represent one veterinary community. We try to be recognized and to be influencers, particularly in the EU institutional setting. And also we try to embrace and disseminate the new technology among all actors, all stakeholders. They will have a responsibility in the transition process towards sustainability. Next slide. The FEV and the whole veterinary community, I would say, are well aware of the the changes happening in the farming and veterinary sectors as regard place, people, products, and process. So there are different challenges in the farming sector and veterinary sectors. The farming sector faces challenges represented by new legislation, economic pressure, responsibility for disease control, and they need an holistic advisory service from the vets. And in the vet sector, there are similar changes in terms of new legislation that require new training tools for the proper and effective implementation of a new provision. We also have to deal with some demographic changes with gender shift, and also, unfortunately, with a decline in animal vet practice. So we have different challenges that really need action to tackle in the next years. Next slide. So the vets have a role in promoting and implementing sustainability and biodiversity, because we are aware of the environmental impact of food animal production on the environment, and we are aware of the most pressing anthropogenic issues like climate change, reduced biodiversity, sustainability, food safety, and antimicrobial resistance. So, but we are in a position to drive changes in animal and agricultural production because we have skill to improve animal health and welfare. Think about experience in tackling epidemic contagious disease with big economic, social, and health impact, BSE, avian flu, African swine fever. We can increase productivity. I mean, we can advise farming to increase productivity with less environmental impact, with action to reduce waste. There are all action needed for the development of a sustainable animal agriculture. So I would say that the veterinary profession can take a leadership in promoting sustainability because they are all positioned at the human-animal environment interface, and they can provide a wide range of sustainability service. You can see in the next slide there are, some of the actions towards sustainability. So improving cattle, animal welfare and health can lead to less waste caused by disease and also reproductive inefficiency. And also we can reduce carbon footprint. Just to recall to the audience that the GHG emission are, the metric commonly used to compare the environmental impact of human activity. However, don't forget there are other relevant factors such as the soil or organic carbon, SOC, that can counterbalance the emission of greenhouse gas. So the vets can help reduce this emission associated to cattle farming, for example, in two ways. There are many examples, like modification of enteric fermentation to reduce emission, particularly methane, which is powerful gas, more powerful than carbon dioxide, from bovine gastrointestinal. We can change the feed, the new feed that can reduce this emission. We can select breeds of animals that produce fewer gas and that can be resilient to climate change. And so the vets are also committed to other sectors like fish and aquaculture, and then they can experiment new sustainable production with higher efficiency and less environmental impact. And not to forget also the sustainability challenges represented by companion animals that really need to be taken in consideration. So the vets can advise pet owners on sustainable diets for their pets, like food with less protein contents, or feed with the new novel protein like insects. They are more sustainable than conventional protein. So sustainability goes along with the biodiversity, and in an area where the vets can contribute by improving, the health and welfare of wild species and protect their habitat. Think about also, the pollinators, the reduce on pollinators and economic and social impact. And last but not least, there are actions to reduce the public health risk of antimicrobial resistance. So the last EFSA-EMA joint report certified that in the last 10 years, so vets could reduce 40% of veterinary antimicrobials in animal farming, with a very, very dramatic impact on the public health. And this is linked also to animal health and welfare, and finally to sustainability of the wood system. Next slide. So again, the veterinary key sustainability service include, you can see here, there are different area. We can improve productivity by means of good management of herd health and food chain information. We can improve the information from the farm to the slaughterhouse and back. And we can improve animal health and welfare by better housing, feeding and nutrition, better prevention of early detection of disease. And also we can intervene in economical society sectors with increased responsibility for farmers and other actors in implement sustainable practices, mitigate of antimicrobial resistance, mitigate the emission of greenhouse gas, and also try to find innovation for reducing this emission, like better carbon sequestration removal. And next slide. So the FEV could promote a strong campaign with this 21 position paper. The key points of this position paper are, of course, advising and supporting farmers through the transfer of knowledge and competency. You can read here, enforcing legislation, apply innovation, and also effective technology along the food supply network. And also we can provide scientific support to policymakers, decision makers. Indeed, the FV look forward to work and collaborate with EU institutions and all relevant stakeholders, but also we can work to raise awareness of and communicate to the consumers the value of products from sustainable food system. Next slide. Yeah, this action, the action I just mentioned are summarized in these flyers. We publish this flyer, we disseminate this flyer with social media, and you know, there's a summary of the vet contribution starting from One Health, food security and safety. Meat safety, of course, is part of the food value chain. Animal welfare and health, based on the knowledge and expertise of the vets in infectious disease and epidemiology. We can optimize animal health and welfare, which means also to increase productivity with efficient use of natural resource and less environmental impact of gas emission. Next slide. And again, there are other flyers that focus on the contribution of the vets to tackle antimicrobial resistance that protect animal farmers, but in the same time protect consumers. And you know, there are vet innovation that are applied at the farm level to protect the environment and mitigate the gas emission and climate change. There are new GHG efficient farming, new technology and practice. Think about the anaerobic digestion, which convert animal waste into methane biogas as a renewable source of energy. And also the contribution of the vets to circular economy with the reduction. We have a lot of program to reduce the waste and also recover feed and energy from animal byproducts. And also promoting correct hygiene and health practices, particularly concerning recycling and donation of food. These are all activities that are involved also with other associations that donate food, safe food to the people. Next slide. So I think that now I'm concluding my presentation with 2 more slides. I would say that the way forward is to also shift agriculture towards a digital innovation. Think about the precision livestock farming based on the use of biosensor for monitoring, early detecting, and also preventing animal health and welfare. So good animal health and welfare has the strong potential to have a crossing-cutting impacts on sustainability. Continue to reduce the use of antibiotics, aligned with the farm to fork target of less than 50% by 2030, reduce the climate footprint of farming, climate neutral by 2050. I would just want to note that the livestock sector represents today almost 50% of the human-induced greenhouse gas emission. However, increasing the efficiency of livestock supply chain is a key to limiting this growth of the gas emission in the future. And then we have also the objective to increase the organic production. And of course, the vets can advise the farming to reach this objective in the deadline established by the Commission and Farm to Fork strategy. Next slide. So I think that is out of discussion that animal farming as environmental, animal welfare, human, and animal health consequences. But even if the vet profession could be considered a part of this problem, is also the solution because they can experiment an ample array of action, starting with advising farmers on good farming practices in line with the sustainability objective. Indeed, the veterinary profession is redefining its role in society for sustainability in the future that fall also under the scope of the UN Sustainability Development Goals. And also, do not forget that veterinary communication will be essential to deliver the right messages to the public and to engage all stakeholders. Next slide. This is the last slide. You can see there are, the veterinarians are everywhere, are engaged in many sectors, ranging from farm animals, wildlife, pet animals, and also fish and aquaculture sector, and also research and innovation. So we can provide a huge contribute to sustainability program, to biodiversity, to tackle the spillover of pathogen from animal hosts. So we have a central role of all these actions. This is the last slide. Thank you for your attention, and I'm really open to any questions and on the content of my presentation and any other issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurizio, for this introduction on the Sustainability Working Group. We're running out of time. I would like to ask Gloria to take the floor. Gloria Luzzani, she's a researcher in the Freiburg University. She's not a veterinarian. It is very interesting for us to have her. She is a food safety, sustainable food systems expert. She holds a Master of Science in Agriculture and Food Economics and a PhD in agri-food systems. So please, as soon as you see your presentation, Gloria, tell us about how do you see sustainability, how do you see also carbon, water footprint, diets, and the discussion now happening in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to participate to this discussion and giving my contribution in raising awareness on sustainability and the need of a more sustainable husbandry system. In the next minutes, I will provide an overview on what sustainability entails and means in the food system. So in the next slide, you will see that I provide the definition of sustainability that Maurizio has already provided. The definition is really broad. Therefore, it can lead to misinterpretation or misunderstanding, also from consumer side, as in the case, for instance, of greenwashing and greenwashing communication. To orientate actions towards more sustainable communities and business, a roadmap towards sustainable development has been entailed by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2020. The SDGs entail aspects such as social equity, the right to health, together with the well-known environmental dimensions of sustainability, combating climate change, protecting water resources, and the ecosystems. In this cake graph, you can see the interconnection between different goals and the dependency of the economic and social dimension on the environmental dimension of sustainability. This is the reason why we are mainly concerned on environmental sustainability. But it's, in any case, it's really important to remember that there is also the social and the economic aspects, and these aspects are relevant for instance, maintaining the livelihood of farmers, or guaranteeing affordability of food and accessibility of food, safety of food as well. This can be also considered part of the the economic and social dimension of sustainability. With the COVID crisis, companies have realized there is a strong interdependency between their operations and the environment. And a new awareness on environmental social governance is increasing, and it has been growing in the last years. Also, as Google statistic confirms. In the next slide, I want to highlight that this interdependency between companies, farmers' activities, production activities is peculiar to the food system, which is both responsible for relevant environmental impacts, and in the meantime, it is also the more exposed to their repercussions. So here you see the stream of food production and consumption. I give you just some numbers about the environmental impact of the food system, just for giving you a flavor. It contributes from 21 to 37% to global greenhouse gas emissions. Here I give you a different data with respect to the one that Maurizio provided already. 17% of this contribution are attributed to livestock. The food production occupies the 40% of global land, 77% of global farming land is occupied by livestock. If we include both pastures used for grazing and animal feed crops. The food system is responsible of 70% of fresh water withdrawals and of course part of water contamination. Nevertheless, 1/3 of food production of the food produced for human consumption is lost or wasted. This means that we have about 1.3 billion tons per year lost. And with them, we also can state that all of the natural resources used to produce this food are as well lost and wasted. In the next slide, we dive into the peculiarities of the food system environmental impacts. It is necessary to clarify what do we mean with food with environmental impact, which is not only carbon footprint, it's not only greenhouse gas emissions, and it does not only relate to climate change. Even if climate change remains an important priority, it's important to state that we do adopt a specific methodology in order to assess what the environmental impact of food production is. We use the life cycle assessment that has different impact categories. These impact categories include land use, climate change, water use, acidification, eutrophication. So for land use, we intend the use of land, both in terms of occupation and conversion. Climate change, it's measured with the emissions of carbon dioxide equivalent, so all of the greenhouse gas emitted. And with water use, we do intend both water withdrawn and the water pollution and evapotranspiration. So the methodology and the fact that we have different impact categories do also imply that we should consider different trade-offs with respect what the impact of food production are. In the last years, new approaches and multi-indicators have been proposed to capture the various facets of environmental burdens of products while underpinning and identifying these trade-offs. between the different impact categories, because it can happen that we can have for the same food product an increased environmental, an increased emission of carbon footprint, an increased carbon footprint, and a not similar increase in water footprint. Despite this, we still have, in any case, a long path ahead. In the next slide, I show you that some information about the most relevant priorities for the food system with respect to the environmental impact. So, in any case, it is necessary to highlight that reducing the climate impact and land use related to animal husbandry, for instance, is of paramount importance. Also for the resilience, and here I do intend economic resilience of the industry itself. This should be responsibility of both producers and consumers, and I also like the fact that vets are proposed as a promoter of sustainability within the livestock system. As shown by these graphs, the greenhouse gas emissions and land use significantly vary according to the type of breeding system and meat. In this, for instance, vets can play a key role by improving animal welfare and safety in intensive livestock, providing specific advice, and working on a better planning at farm level. On the other hand, also consumers should take their own responsibility. This is really important because we always ask producers to improve, to reduce their climate impact, their carbon footprint. But as consumers, we also have to take up our responsibility and shifting at first, as you can see in this graph, our diet to the recommended intake. Here you see how the intake of different types of food change over different countries, and in the gray zone you see how this consumption overpass the recommended intake. Furthermore, as consumers, we should be more aware of how we handle food and what is the impact of cooking. So if we press, we will see more information related to, if we see, we will see the animation for the slide by pressing on. So we will see that there is another graph in this slide with the information related to what different step, how different step can affect the carbon footprint and the greenhouse gas emission. Maybe it's not working, Francesco, but if you press on, exactly. So here you see the land use, how it changes, and then again in the next graph, pressing again, going on again, you will see, and again you will see how different production step can change at the household level. You can see what is the impact of also, for instance, cooking, that basically can offset the saving in greenhouse gas emission with that we can get with vegetarian and vegan diets. And also waste plays an important role. It can contribute up to 20% of the overall greenhouse gas emission of the diet. And that basically are really different, can range from 2.5 up to 7.2 kilogram of carbon dioxide equivalent per day per diet. In the next slide, I give you an example of what has been done and proposed by the Lancet Commission in order to foster this common effort towards a more responsible production and consumption, so more responsible diet. They proposed the flexitarian diet by modeling how the environmental impacts change according to different dietary patterns, waste scenarios, technology adoption, and the increase of technology in the production system. As you see in the red cells, we have a no-goes. So basically, the scenario proposed aren't feasible, and in the gray cells, we find higher degrees of technology, lower or no waste in the food system, and also a better best practices, better practices in agriculture production. These actions allow us to remain in the so-called environmental safe operating space. Nevertheless, some critics have been raised against the flex diets that basically propose reduced consumption in red meat, less than 300 grams per week, less added sugar, reduction in added sugar, and good consumption up to 400 grams per day of fruits and vegetables. As I was saying, there were some critics against the flexitarian diets. Some relate to its affordability in low-medium income countries and a lack in the alignment to local culture and traditions, and the risk that the greenhouse gas emissions can increase, especially in low-middle income country, according to what is the consumption in their diets now. Anyway, for high-income countries, the meat consumption should decrease. In the next slide, I want to emphasize, as last but not least, that we also need to focus our attention to the economic and social dimensions of the food system and the importance and considering the importance that the specific production system has for our economy, and understanding how these economic aspects can be safeguarded, now while any case remaining and staying within the safe operating space for the environment and for the natural resources. In this scientific domain, many things which we should also do. So we still have to propose valuable, reliable, and meaningful indicators that can help in understanding the sustainability, social and economic sustainability of food production. To conclude, in the next slide, I like to report some approaches from the literature to a more sustainable animal husbandry. Garnett shows that completely omitting animal source food in diets can have a big disadvantage because feed supplies that are unfit or unwanted for human use can no longer be transformed into healthy food by animals. Grass resources, food loss and waste, for example, can be turned into low opportunity cost feedstuffs that do not compete with land for food production. Van Santen shows how on a land use perspective, grass-based ruminant system on marginal lands produce human digestible protein more efficiently than food crops, and proposes a comprehensive reorganization of the livestock system with the use of marginal land for production of animal source food. And he states that we can produce a daily about 3 grams of protein per person. So as take-home message in the last slide, I want to highlight that we need to shift towards a more sustainable food system and livestock system and a more sustainable diet. And this requires a common effort, shifting to more sustainable food and diets, reducing food waste, enhancing the circularity of the food system, including contributing to waste separation, defining food well-being priorities for oneself, for ourselves and our family, coping with the effects of climate change when necessary, including adaptation. In livestock system, shifting the attention from increasing productivity per animal to increasing protein production for humans per hectare, which means making optimal use of leftovers and low opportunity cost feedstuff and marginal lands. With this, I conclude. Thank you for your attention, and I am now over to Francesco.
Thank you, Gloria. This is a very comprehensive presentation. I like it. I like it. The last slide on the approaches, and yeah, there's a lot of discussion happening on plant-based diets, flexitarian diets. A lot of discussion also on leftovers, feed stuff, reintroducing the processed animal proteins in the protein value chain. I can tell you a lot of discussion is happening. We're running a bit of time, but I would like to give the floor to David Black. I will come back to you, Gloria, with a specific question for you later on. David, please, as soon as you can run your presentation from yourself. First, I want to introduce David. Sorry, David. David is a friend of us. He's a veterinarian. He's a friend of Simon Doty, and he's a farm animal veterinarian, specifically focusing on bovine reproduction and also advanced breeding technologies. He is very keen. He's very keen in farm practices veterinarian. He's based in UK in the region of Cumbria. So, David, I give it the floor to you.
Thank you, Fran. I'm just trying to get the presentation to appear on my screen, which was here before.
We can see you, and take your time, no hurry.
Okay, it's appeared now.
Here we go. Make it full.
Okay, you can see it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you, Fran, Rens, Maurizio, and everybody for the invitation to speak to you this morning. I've been told to speak slow, but I've got a lot to get through, so I've got a lot of pictures. I've got several hats that I wear. Probably the main one today through Simon is to talk to you from my Vet Sustain aspect. Vet Sustain is a not-for-profit organisation that's been set up in the UK in the last couple of years with the sole purpose of enabling, inspiring, and empowering veterinarians, vet professionals, not just vets, vet nurses, everybody working in vet-led businesses in all things sustainable. I'm also a veterinary practitioner in a mixed rural practice in Cumbria, and I'm managing director of an organisation called Vet Salus, which is looking to global collaboration of vets. We've already touched on what the meaning might be of sustainability. This is the commonly used one. We've seen this already this morning. But we perhaps should ask ourselves whether sustainability in itself is enough, because we've done a lot of damage to the planet already. So we need to go past sustainability and actually move into regenerative practices. We know what the issues are. There's no point in going through these in any great detail, but we know that we're heading towards a climate and ecological disaster. We know that nature's declining at unprecedented rates with species extinctions and what have you. Very, very relevant with COVID. Fran has brought that to the table this morning, that he's struggling with COVID at the moment, but very topical. 75% of new infectious diseases are zoonotic, and monkeypox is another one. We know about the threat of antimicrobial.
David, can you run your presentation? I mean, can you also make the slide going on, because
this conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, voila, that's it. Thank you. You can also make it a full screen. If you're able to do that, is a button close to the minus on the right.
Well, I have that on my screen. Is it not showing?
You have it. Okay, that's fine. We keep it like that. Please go on.
Can you see it now, Fran?
Yeah, we see the second, the third, the fourth slide. What are the issues?
Okay, we can see that now. Okay, so we've talked about antimicrobial resistance and animal welfare. So is that coming up now, Fran? We can see the SDGs?
No, I can't see them.
Oh dear, what's that? What's happening? I wonder if there's...
Voila, now we see it.
Okay. Okay, let me work this. Oh,
yeah,
you can't see the full screen,
you can use your arrows also, eh? Now we are on the Royal College. Voila. Now SADG. You can go on.
Okay, we'll try from this. It looks fine from my end. Okay, so we've looked this morning at the SDGs, and what we did within Vet Sustain is we looked at the what we call the veterinary sustainability goals. So those we identified as a diverse and abundant wildlife, net zero warming, a no waste society, a good life for animals, health and happiness, and enough clean water for all. And we then mapped those against the veterinary sustainability goals. And you can see very clearly that the goals map very nicely from the SDGs, the UN SDGs, to the veterinary SDGs, particularly around health and happiness and a good life for animals, and of course a good death for animals is important also. This really matters. I think the oaths and the promises that vets make when they graduate. I have the UK one here and the French one. Just for examples of, I believe that nearly every veterinarian globally makes a pledge like this, and most of these pledges include ensuring the health and welfare of animals committed to our care. We've touched on this before. Can I just check, Fran, that this is working now? You can see these slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. Okay, super. Thank you. So we've touched on this already, and I'm just showing this graphically, that the vets are very unique and very privileged in that we sit in this position between human, animal, and environmental health, and there's very few people sit and work in that environment. And we have a great role to play in influencing the agricultural sector. And to do that, we need to inform ourselves. We need to understand the science, the technology, the terminology, science around things like GWP star, which I'll come back to. We've talked about some of the terminologies, but there's a big overlap between some of the words that we use around organic, regenerative, sustainable, intensification of sustainable systems. There's a lot of confusion. We need to know about legislation and policy, the impacts of genomics and advanced breeding, and so on and so on. And then we need to optimize health and welfare, as we've talked about before. But I would say that a large part of what we have to do is reframe the discussion. This is not new for vets. It's not new for farmers. We've been doing a lot of things over the last generations that are towards sustainability. So it's not as if we're starting on the journey, but I think we have to reframe the discussion so that we talk about it in a different way. It's, for example, net zero will not be possible without farming. Farming is part of the solution to global warming. Nobody else can sink the carbon back into the soil other than the keepers of the land. GWP star is an important thing that we can look at how we measure the impact of methane particularly. And I love this quote from Jude Capper at BCBA last year, that if all dairy cattle worldwide had UK yields, global milk supply could be maintained with 181 million fewer cows, 70% fewer cows. Now, clearly, we're not going to be able to produce 30 or 40 litres of milk from sub-Saharan cows, but what that tells us is there's a lot we can do with efficiency of production from animals. And we're already aware, as I say, we're already doing a lot of this, so that vets in practice are already working with disease control and eradication. A lot of what we do, increasing production, reducing antimicrobial use, using preventative medicine, all helps towards sustainability. We're already very engaged with welfare. Improving genetics is something that we do on a daily basis, and things like integrated parasite management. So try and understand a lot more about how we manage parasites rather than just blanket worming or pulse release boluses or whatever it might be for worming, and actually think about that whole integrated system. And the picture at the bottom are dung beetles, which is a wonderful proxy for how much antiparasitics are going into our grazing animals. And this is a slide from Statham and others, which really was just looking in different countries about the potential reduction in greenhouse gas intensity of milk production. This is some of the UK data, but look at the improvement that we could deliver very quickly by improving the fertility of a herd. If we take the worst, the most infertile herds in the UK, we can potentially improve their impact on greenhouse gas by almost 30% by getting that back to a normal level. Similarly with mastitis and BVD, it's a great surprise to me that we don't hear more talk about carbon and greenhouse gases when we're talking about endemic disease, because of, as Gloria's already touched on, there's so much we can do by improving the health of our animals to reduce that impact. Defining animal welfare, that hasn't really changed, or hadn't really changed from the initial 1965 reports, and it talked about the concept of the 5 freedoms. But of course, the 5 freedoms focus very much on poor welfare and suffering and things that mustn't happen to animals, whereas the more modern thinking, for example, by Miller in 2016, was looking at much more about animals having lives worth living, and to understand that and to try and not only minimize negative experiences, but to try and provide animals with opportunities for positive experiences. I was at Nottingham University this week seeing some experiments being done there, giving animals an enhanced environment and watching how they behave with introduced items into their environments. So what have we done at Vet Sustain to try and help sort of reframe this and to help the journey? We've produced some introductions to sustainability in farm practice. We've done this for the UK and for New Zealand. There's no reason we can't do it for every other country. The principles are the same. It's just a matter of some nuances in various countries. And we're very proud of this training course, which is about to be launched, which is basically a 10-module online training course looking at the role of vets in sustainable food and farming, starting with the role of the vet in sustainability, going right through to how to drive change and how to deliver sustainable veterinary businesses. And just to give you a flavour of that, it's very hot off the press. It's as I say, online. It's a joint venture between Vet Sustain and Vet Salus. Each module of the course has got a module champion, and the module champions sort of set the tone and have taken sort of the responsibility for each of the 10 modules. There's little quizzes throughout it. It'll be assessed and will be a LANTRA approved course. So there's assessments throughout the course. There's everything in there is referenced. It's all evidence based, and there's information in there. There's case studies, which always seems to be a good way of getting the information across. And then there's deep dives if people want to dive deeper into particular aspects of the topic. We give that opportunity as well. So that's really exciting. And then I just want to touch on the aspects of advocacy as vets, and I think this is really key. If we say that the average human carbon footprint is about 13 tons, that's what it's said to be in the UK, 13 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. What we can then look at is say, well, okay, how many tons of carbon dioxide equivalent are being produced by the animals under our care? Now, clearly, we don't have direct responsibility for that, but we have an influence on that. So if you look at these figures from the UK, an average dairy vet in the UK has animals under his care or her care that produce about 24,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Beef cattle is 30,000 tons. Poultry vets, because of the size of the profession and the size of the industry, have about 99,000 tons of CO2 equivalent from the animals under their care. So what I'm trying to say here is there's obviously something that we can do as ourselves, as individuals, there's something we can do as vet-led businesses, but there's a massive amount we can do as advocates to help improve those carbon dioxide equivalents. Are vets respected in Europe? This was kindly sent to me by Fran the other day to update my data, and this is looking at how well vets themselves feel they are regarded. So it's not actually how they're regarded; it's how vets feel they're regarded, and by their customers. I think it's rather sad that vets only think that 54% of their customers highly regard them anything above neutral. 54% of them are either highly or very highly regarded, they feel, by their customers, and even less by the public. So I think it's quite a sad reflection on the profession that we think of ourselves as being quite poorly regarded by our customers and by the public. In the UK, this is a survey that was done recently by one of the main farming magazine in the UK, and I think the key aspect of this is that although 93% of people trust their vets, 77% of farmers say that their vet is integral to the success of their business. Not just part of it, not just associated with it, absolutely integral to it. So clearly farmers do respect their vets, and therefore it comes back to my point about advocacy. Regenerative agriculture is a massive subject. I think it can be overthought sometimes. I think the key principles about regenerative agriculture are about diversity and connectives and using principles, not prescriptions, having the right animals in the right place at the right time. We all know without question that soil health is probably key and is probably the most important factor in all of this. And Gabe Brown in the States has his 5 principles, and the reason for putting those in red is that although we've talked a lot and people talk a lot about losing animals and just growing crops on the land, I think we all now understand that animals are part of that biodiverse system. We need animals in the right place, and we need integrated livestock systems if we're going to be efficient and we get away from the position of monoculture. We're not very good at complexity anymore. I think that's part of the key. We clearly don't have a slash and burn type situation in Europe, and we don't have massive feedlots, but we do have a lot of monoculture. We still have a lot of issues there, and we do have to get away from that. We do have to try and have a much more complex and biodiverse way of farming. Methane is obviously key, and there was a lot of discussion at COP26 about methane, and for example, the UK is committed to reduce methane output by 30% by 2030. I think the point I wanted to make with this slide is that although agriculture and waste is combined in that second pillar along, and it's a shame that we don't have that in this graphic split out. On the right-hand side of the balance, which is the sinking back into the ground, a lot of that is from chemical reactions in the atmosphere, but also some of it is through sinking into the soils. And I think it's important that we understand that agriculture is not necessarily all anthropogenic flux some of that is necessary, and as we just heard very clearly from Gloria, a large part of that is waste. And I just wanted to remind ourselves about the biogenic cycle, and that we've had ruminants on this planet for thousands, many thousands of years, and they've been in a relatively balanced biogenic cycle of eating forage, producing methane. That methane is then broken down in the atmosphere back into CO2 and water, and that's part of a natural cycle, and that has been a relatively balanced cycle for a long time. It's the fact that we're now digging deep into the surface of the earth and digging out carbons, fossil fuels, and burning them, which is then adding to the impact and putting CO2 into the atmosphere, which is going to be there for thousands of years. I think this is a key aspect that we really should educate ourselves about, in that most of the metrics that we've seen until very recently have been based on GWP 100, global warming potential 100. We know that methane is 28 times more potent than CO2 as a global warming gas, but it oxidizes in the atmosphere and has a half-life of about 10 years, 10 to 12 years it's gone. And therefore, the GWP 100 metric, which allows for it to be there for 100 years, is not accurate. And that's why we should now be looking at GWP star, which is some work that has come out of Oxford, which is allowing for that breakdown of methane. And therefore, if we get into a situation, if we look at the right-hand side of this graph, if we get into a situation whereby emissions of methane and CO2 fall down to a zero, it's a hypothetical situation, you will see that the warming potential from that methane will also fall down to zero 10 to 12 years later. But the warming potential of that CO2 won't fall. It will continue to rise, and then it will plateau. And that's the situation that we're in. It's not an excuse for farming not to deal with methane. But it's actually a very good reason for why we should deal with methane, because it's something that we can do that is going to have an impact fairly quickly. And this is a recent report from the Morden Institute in Edinburgh, talking about the actions of what we can do about methane, and that's not going to work, Fran, because the slide's not working. So improving animal health, one of the conclusions that comes out of the Morden report is that improving animal health and reducing associated methane emissions is something that we can do now. We have the knowledge, we have the tools, and they're already available. So very quickly, I just want to talk a little bit about genetics and breeding. It's becoming more and more apparent that genetics is absolutely key to sustainability in farming. Lots of papers are around now that are addressing this, but not in any complex way, other than we're not talking about Frankenstein gene editing or being used in the short term, but there's a lot of things that we can do with genetics. And if we look at this very simple graph of how we can influence genetic gain, we make genetic progress by looking at selection intensity, the accuracy of our selection, phenotypic variation, and we divide all that by genetic generational interval to make genetic progress. The only thing we can't do anything about in that formula is the genotypic variation of a group of animals. But using genomics and using IVF as an example, an advanced breeding technology, we can dramatically improve the selection intensity and the accuracy. Why is that important? Well, this is a breeding index. Just as an example, this is one of the animals that we have on site at the moment. This heifer was born in August 2021. She has a reliability, genomic reliability of 67%. So we're pretty good reliability on the traits that we're choosing, and we're now starting to see environmental indexes being included. This is the EnviroCow index, and I think we'll see a lot more of these being produced, being developed over the next short space of time, so that we get much more information from our genomic indexes, so that we can select better cattle, more efficient cattle for breeding from. So why is that important? Well, just looking at these two graphs, if we look at the left-hand bell curve, first of all, this is if we were using a parent average. It's obviously a cartoon, but just to make the point, but this is if we were using the parent average to select animals within a herd. So that's the traditional way of doing it, using the actual sort of the averages of parents and siblings and offspring ultimately, and then selecting the breeding animals from the better end of the curve. You can see that there's a trend. The black animals are the superior animals. You can see there's a trend towards them being towards the right-hand side of the curve, but there's still a mixture of animals. If we use genomics on the right-hand side there, we've got a much more efficient and more accurate way of selecting the high genetic merit animals, so that you can see therefore that we've got a few more black dots towards the right-hand side. Yes, there's still some variation within the population, but we've got a much more accurate way of doing it. And if we then select those animals to breed from, again at the right-hand side, we've got a much more accurate and much more, we're putting a lot more selection pressure on by selecting from those animals. Cattle IVF, very quickly, is basically the technique is to aspirate or using ultrasound guided aspiration. We'll collect eggs directly from the ovary of the cow. We'll stimulate the cow with some stimulating hormone, so she'll produce more follicles, more eggs than she normally would. We collect those by ultrasound guided aspiration. Those then go into the lab, they're fertilized in the lab, and the embryos are grown in the lab. And the great benefits of IVF is that we get fantastically improved genetic progress. We can work with animals which are much younger, so we can start from about 7 months of age, collecting eggs. We get many more calves per donor per year, and we can use multiple donors from a single unit of semen. So it's a much more efficient way of breeding. Here's the same sort of thing in a graphical format. So these are the top left-hand picture there. You can see all the various eggs on an ovary. That's a bovine ovary that's been superovulated. This is myself collecting them, aspirating them. They then go into the lab for fertilizing, and we can then move from being what we call oocytes, or the eggs themselves, in that bottom the two photographs, over a period of time, as you can hopefully see from that video running. Those will, over a period of a week, develop from being an egg into a fully blown embryo. So just to put that into some graphical detail, how do we maximize this genetic gain? Well, the graph on the left shows us if we can reduce the generation interval, so we're selecting much younger animals, we're then using surrogates to carry those calves. We can massively improve our genetic gain. And similarly, on the right-hand side, if we can increase the selection pressure by accurately selecting the top 10% of those animals and whatever trait that we're looking for, again, we can massively improve the genetic gain. So if we can add those two together, that's a cumulative effect. Where does that become important? Well, this is something that's happening quite a lot across Europe now, is where people are using beef semen on the bottom percentage of their herd. So they're using sex semen, let's say, on the top 70% of the animals, and they're using sex semen on the bottom 30%, let's say. What we can then do if we were to use IVF is we can select from the very top, say 15% of those animals, and use the rest of the animals in the herd as recipients, so that we're then massively amplifying. We're using that top elite, and the elite. When I'm saying elite, we're not talking about necessarily about production. We're talking about the desirable traits for those animals. Another exciting thing that I think we can do, and we've already done this. We've proved the concept here working in Zimbabwe, and we're about to do some into Rwanda. Slightly complicated graphic, but what we're trying to show here is that basically we could select high genetic or animals within Europe that have got the genetic traits that we're seeking. We can use IVF to produce those embryos. They can be flown out in an airplane to a developing country. We can put several hundred embryos in a flask the size of a sort of a desktop fridge, and those can then be implanted into indigenous cattle in whichever developing country we're looking to support, as the photograph at the bottom left shows. I've taken Africa as an example, which is where we're working, but we're calling it the funnel and cascade innovation. But this sort of technology could really help us get those desirable traits spread much more dramatically globally. And finally, one exciting bit of technology we just again proved concept on is actually taking a biopsy of an embryo. So this picture that you can see here is a day 6 embryo. We're actually using this pipette, just drawing a number of cells from the embryo. We've just punched a hole in the egg shell, the shell of the egg of the embryo, and extracted a few cells. We can take about 10 cells. It doesn't damage the embryo. It goes on to develop completely normally, but we can then genotype those cells. So we would actually be able to have an embryo of 7 days of age, frozen in liquid nitrogen, with its complete genotype already known to us. And that will be a way that we'll be able to improve, dramatically improve the selection and the way that we can breed cattle in the future. So I apologize that the PowerPoint didn't work completely normally, and I've had to do it by hand, but I wanted to conclude really by showing you my favorite painting of a cow by Bonnie Moore. And this slide, I used to just say that was the future of farming needs a healthy industry, which needs healthy animals. And most recently, I've now added in which needs health and healthy people, because I think the whole aspect of sustainability and One Health is around the health of the people that are working in that industry, and the wider population, which, as Gloria talks about, it's a much bigger picture. So thank you, Fran. I apologise again, but the PowerPoint didn't work properly, but hopefully you got the message.
No, thank you, David. We got the message, and yeah, this was something we were looking for I would say, to see also what is happening in the breeding techniques and this kind of stuff. I would like to ask Anna. Anna, do you have any question for David?
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and thank you for the very insightful presentation, David. I would like to speak for the new generation of veterinarians here. Sustainability is also ensuring the continuity and capacity building of future generations. Unfortunately, we are still facing shortages of veterinarians working in a food production sector, and I believe a little bit of understanding of the impact of our, for example, this career path on public health and climate change. Therefore, I would like to ask if there is any advice you could give to not only academia, but practitioners working with young veterinarians in this regard, and support young veterinarians in building this understanding.
Yeah, that's a great question, Anna, and I don't think there's a simple answer to it. I think veterinary businesses have to learn to deal with the younger generations. You're aware that we've got a massive feminization of the profession now, and that requires more flexible working. And I think we have to find ways of making that happen. I think veterinary practice is not as profitable potentially as it needs to be able to reward people properly. I think we've got a big issue around mental health in the profession. Suicides are still embarrassing, very high. And I've got another sort of several slides that I talk quite a lot about this, about how we can support that the mental health of the younger generation. I think it's a challenge to be able to bring in those youngsters, particularly practices like ours. We're a mixed rural practice. It's still just a large degree a way of life, particularly for rural practice. We still have to do our own out of hours cover and so on, things like that. I think there's a role for the universities to play in selecting perhaps more not more appropriate, but making sure that we're selecting people who are going to last, who want to work in the rural communities, and it's not all about academic ability. So I think there's a role to play there. I think there's a role for veterinary practices to actually teach and coach and mentor and support a lot more potentially than we did back in the old days.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. Indeed, sometimes you know students are just thrown in the market, but then they miss a bit of kind of coaching, job coaching when you approach your veterinary practice or when you approach the first time ever your job and things like that. This is kind of I know people call it job coaching, but I have a question from the chat for you, David, about the PMSG, the gonadotropin used. If this is gonadotropin used in the IVF process to shorten the genetic cycle in dairy cows, are you aware of this?
Not specifically. In what way is this being? Is there any more? I haven't seen the chat. Is there any more information on that?
Well, it was a question from our previous stagiaire. She's very much into horses, breeding. But anyway, maybe.
Is it used? I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
It's not something we use. We're using FSH, follicle stimulating hormone.
Okay.
At a low dose, using it at a much lower dose than we would use for conventional flushing. But I'm not aware that PMSG is being used. Certainly not in the systems that we use.
Good. That was the answer. I have a question also from my side. There's a lot of discussion about global warming potential, warming equivalents. You show the GWP star. But I see authorities and generally regulators and also the Commission, they keep using, also IPCC, they keep using the global warming potential as the basic metrics. But I see in the scientific community a lot of discussion about the global warming potential star, which is much more reliable, which is much more, it's a much better metrics. What is your opinion? Why the scientific communities, they are keep debating on this issue and how we can convey to the regulators that this GWP star is much more reliable as a metric?
It's certainly more reliable for methane. I get the sense that some people feel that GWP star could be used as an excuse for farming, and that we say, well, look, it's only there for 12 years, it's not our problem. Actually, I think it's the opposite. I think it's a positive message for us, because anything that we can do to improve efficiency, if we can improve efficiency of global of livestock agriculture by 1/3 of 1%, we start contributing to global cooling. So it's a positive message for me. Yes, we're producing methane. Yes, we can produce less of it. And if we do produce less of it, within 12 years, we're seeing an impact. And it's probably one of the few things that we can actually do to have a short-term effect, because the CO2 is there for thousands of years. So I wonder if it's a little bit of it seems a bit of a threat that agriculture is going to use it as an excuse. And actually, I don't think we should.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Thank you, David, for your presentation, and we will have a further discussion on maybe some technicalities later on. I would like to introduce you the short contribution from Niels Gabrowski. Niels Gabrowski is a German veterinarian. He's a food safety expert. He's also an old friend of the Insects Task Force. As you understood, he's mainly focusing on entomophagy, edible insects microbiology, insect processing, regulatory affairs, and safety and feeding practices. He's also a specialist in dairy products and hygiene. So, Niels, as soon as you see your presentation on, voila, tell us something about it. We can see it, and tell us about insects. How much scalable is this new practices and new industry?
Well, coming directly to your question, well, of course, there is a potential, and there's also the need to have it scaled, because you see, actually, if you're looking at the prices, at least regarding the prices for the food insects, they are still quite high, and this is mainly due to a lot of work that has to be done manually. But since insect production is basically modular thing, it is very, very prone for, let us say, scaling it up, having the support by technology, by machines, and all these kinds of things. Did you read me?
We can see your presentation, and tell us a bit more.
Okay, right. So I don't know. Can you see it that it moves?
We see. It's up to you to move it, or maybe we can.
Wonderful. Great. Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for the kind introduction. It's my honor to be here and to just share some some small thoughts regarding insects as a as a feedstuff. I would like to have some, let us say, some time-based approach. So I would start with yesterday. That means the past. Of course, basically, animals have been consuming insects from the very start on, regardless whether they are wild animals or they are also livestock animals, be they terrestrial or also be they aquatic. Because insects are quite nice source for a series of nutrients, not only proteins. So basically, coming to what also has been practiced so far, specifically here in Europe, is that we have a certain scenario which is based on having, moreover, vertebrate livestock, which we are feeding with minerals, with plants, and also up to a certain degree with side streams from vertebrate livestock too. However, this thing has changed, and today we're having new players in our system, which in this case are, they are invertebrates, mainly they are insects. And in this case, the curious or the interesting thing is that these insects enter the game on both sides. That means, on one hand, we have a series of insect species which are now regarded as novel food. Mainly, there are some crickets, there are some mealworms, and there are some locusts. But we're also having a list of those insect species which can be used as a feedstuff, and not only for aquaculture, but also now for poultry and for pig, which is quite an interesting and very, very important step which was taken last year. So we have changed this system, and we should also have a look at the broader view to have the system fit into what is needed today. So basically, using insects as a livestock feed is basically coming back to the roots, because if you're having poultry, if you're having pigs or fish outside where they have access to insects, they will surely eat them because they have this kind of natural thing. It's also a good thing because of the profile of these animals convey. It is basically regarded to be of high quality. Moreover, the species which we are handling on a somewhat commercial level, and not only typically the protein, which is with what insects are mostly associated with, but also with other kind of nutrients such as different fatty acids, minerals, and also vitamins, which are also a nice source contained in these animals. But not only this.
Nils, sorry, can you also scroll down your presentation to using your arrows or your mouse?
I've been doing this. I'm sorry for
Voila,
that.
good. That's fine. Here
Can
we
you
go.
see it now? So I have to
Yeah,
return just as David did.
that's
So,
fine.
sorry for that. So I was just coming to this. Can you see this one now?
Yeah,
Today it says?
yeah.
All right, okay. So then I will just switch to this one. Okay. Right, okay. So, just once again, I was mentioning that, of course, feeding insects to livestock is basically something which is natural. And as I said, it does not only contain the protein and, but also other substances like fat and minerals and vitamins. But also there are other substances, for instance, like bioactive substances, which are actually possible or capable of increasing the appetite of the animals which are feeding them. And also chitin is interesting because there are good data showing that chitin acts as a stimulant for the immune system. In this way, we were able to include up to 40% of insects in fish feed formulations and up to 30% for chicken feed formulae. However, we must consider the following. There are two major impact factors which may modify this profile, which I mentioned before. The first thing, of course, is the species. It means of the species which we are handling, each one has a profile of its own. This is something that is very important, because we should not be thinking about the insect. There are many, many different species, and all have their own pros and cons. The other thing we need to consider is the feed source, because depending on what we feed, the composition will change largely even within a species. This is quite important to think and to know about, because this will also afterwards affect us the outcome of the way which we are using these insects in any kind of feed formulation. So far, the EU has allowed 8 species, which are mainly some fly species. We have some mealworm species, we have some cricket species, and also we have recently included here the silkworm, which is also another source for protein and other substances of importance. However, the trouble which we are facing, or let us say a challenge, sorry, is that we are still having some kind of feeding restrictions. And these restrictions, for instance, let us say slaughterhouse offal, or let us say also some catering leftovers, they are coming into the system by tradition, because they were not allowed for ordinary vertebrate livestock. And so just in order to keep the tradition, I suppose, then they are currently also not allowed for insects. And of course, this is something which is very, very important to consider. There are also safety concerns. Moreover, when we're talking about, let us say, feeding slaughterhouse or falls, because there is definitely some risks, things there involved. However, we could also consider that we're not talking about vertebrate feedstock animal any longer, because as many invertebrates, moreover the flies and the mealworms, they are omnivores, and they are just fitting into this kind of ecological niche to feed on those things we usually do not use as a feedstuff. So I think, well, the vision I'd like to share with you today is that we should definitely keep in mind and keep it very, very present that there is a safety assessment which is needed, which must be conducted in order to to increase the use of non-traditional feedstuffs as a feedstuff for insects, in order to increase sustainability. The other thing is that, as not all the species consume every kind of possible feedstuff, or let us say substrate or side stream, there should also be inclusion of more invertebrate feed species in the future. However, as we want to produce insects, no matter what kind of purpose we give them, we're talking about an insect or animal production. And this, of course, links us back to our basic idea that we have to stress also animal health and animal welfare issues in productive insects. And this is once again the thing which the vets are best at doing so, with the goal to provide the insect farmer with the same high quality service as for ordinary livestock. That means we want, we must assess, we must inform our partners, our clients, who want also to engage in the area of insects. We have started to do so. We have an international network which has been running for some years now. We start very, very slowly and very quietly, but here we are. And of course, here I have the link, so everyone who wants to join us, drop me a line, and we're happy to have you with us. So with this final little picture was taken in our project IFNext, where we are working with farmer ladies who want to increase their income by producing crickets in Cambodia and Thailand. Thank you for your attention. Here is my mail, and I'm ready for your questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Niels. Thank you for that. I know the discussion in the insect sector, also in the European Union, is rather interesting because of Europe discover that we need proteins. The EU protein value chain is rather weak, unfortunately. Okay, I would like to move to our last speaker, who is Carlos Pinero. Carlos Pinero is a veterinarian from Spain, and he's specialized in pigs and poultry, but specifically on livestock information system, digitalization of livestock production, predictive analytics, and health and production monitoring data. So integrating all this data from farm up to the abattoir, and then putting all together the picture. So, Carlos, I would like to give you the floor, and please.
Thank you very much, Francesco. I'd like to, I'm very happy to be here sharing our expertise with some practical approach. This is something that it's already paying our salaries, and this is what I would like to share with you all. A bit of framework, trying to go a bit beyond of the concept of sustainability and linked to digitalization. This is a very solid pairing. In a way, it's a head and tails of the same coin. And I will present three practical opportunities, three business cases, let's say, where the veterinarians, we can develop this our classical activity in this new scenario. I will use a great Deloitte report presented immediately before the pandemics, where it's most of the things are perfectly valid. We're going to be more people, probably with more income, looking for more specific quality food, in particular meat. Will go up to 400 million tons, in particular in those areas that has more room for improvement, either in Africa or in Asia, where the increase will be quite big. And the interesting thing is that we think that we have available land and water to produce what we need, even to double that amount. But if they're not unexpected, unforeseen events, and we have expected in the last couple of years unexpected events, the pandemic, the invasion of Ukraine, but theoretically we have certain margin of security. But it seems that if we take a look to the emissions, we can't produce what is expected. If we keep on doing things as we have been doing during the last years, business as usual case, greenhouse emissions will be there, will increase up to 5.2 gigatons per year, and this is not enough to keep global warming below this red line of 2 degrees centigrade. So this is going to be the limitation. And in this report is very interesting because under this scenario, we will only be able to produce up to 41% of the meat that we will need in 2050. And the rest, 59%, will be linked to CO2 levels increases. That is something that cannot be achieved under the current production model. So we need to do something, and we need to implement a number of solutions that are luckily are complementary and cumulative. We can do certain things. Those things are, I would say, common sense things, and some of those things that are quite close to our activity. We need to improve the way we're doing things, best practice rollout. We need to work a lot on precision feeding. We need to run more smart waste management. We need to work on it and health monitoring to keep the context of 2 degrees centigrade maximum. The interesting thing is that this is linked to some of the concepts that we are using in a routine, those concepts of feed, weight, climate, waste, behavior, feed conversion rate, our normal vet language, let's say. It's linked to productivity and profitability. And this report states clearly that we will not be able to achieve these goals without technology, without digitalization. not only for the vets, but also for the managers, the concept of EBITDA, benefits after taxes, is critical. And this is not something that is it's mandatory, that costs money for the sector, for the vets, for the producers. Digital business models can improve company results, and it's described that there are 3 steps for improvement, 3 layers. The first one is that if we start work using data instead of just a classical way, guessing or not using data in a routine, we can improve the benefits of the companies, of the producers, of the farmers up to 10%. If we start doing something with data, once that they are arranged, they are producing a routine, and we start applying the big or almost big data techniques, some of the predictive analytics, some of the Internet of the Things or Internet of the Swine things, as we call it, we can improve our benefits up to 20%. And if we go further and we start using digital business models, using patterns, using prescriptive analytics, which is a combination of predictive analytics plus working protocols, generating digital services of great added value, we can improve our results up to 30%, which is something that is attractive. Beyond of this is what science tells, but what about the regulations? Well, the European Commission is there, has been described already, the Farm to Fork program, and they are stating clear things in terms. The first one is we, the producers, the vets, ensure the production of sufficient, affordable, and nutritious food. And I would like to highlight sufficient and affordable within the limits of the planet. So they're telling us produce and be efficient in doing so. Reduce your pesticides in agriculture and antimicrobials, antibiotics in our livestock practice. So do it controlling and reducing the use of those substances, and do it improving your standards, in particular related to animal welfare. So it seems that with this all, the transition to a more environmentally friendly food systems generates a lot of opportunities for the whole sector, in particular for us. This has been described, but I would like to highlight for a moment. Sustainability is pretty well understood. In general, it's very intuitive description, but sustainability has always 3 dimensions, and only one of these dimensions is normally used, which is the environmental one. The first one is economic sustainability. The farms, the companies must be there and must get a benefit, a profit to keep activity over time. The second one is the classical one. We need to use properly our resources and decrease and cut our emissions, and this is well understood. And the third one, which is people, the social sustainability, either for the people that is involved there and for our customers. We, the people, are the key part in this, because it's something that's it's going to be the power engine of everything. So in this context, there is something that we need to remember also, that the scenario has changed a lot, because every day is more difficult to visit a farm because of classical animal health problems, African swine fever, PRRS, avian influenza, some others. But recently we have also human health problems, mostly related with COVID-19. So in this context, knowing what's going on, remote monitoring makes more sense than ever. It's worth to remember that classically we have few sources of data. In monogastrics, in pigs mainly, we have to deal with reproduction, a bit of production, but now we have many other sources of data, or data silos. Of course, the reproduction one, the health and antibiotics, the feeding of biosecurity, abattoir data, even the staff operations and movements of the people, not only in pigs, also these concepts are perfectly applicable in other species like poultry. Also environmental emissions, etc. And the relations among them, because sometimes the combination between different sources of data It's absolutely great. So in this context, I'm going to show three areas where we have to start working within this number of data silos, following the Deloitte recommendations. Let's work on precision feeding, let's work on health monitoring and antibiotics control, and also in digital biosecurity. The first one, this has changed a lot because this is a concept that has been described from more than 2 decades ago. No one is questioning that it is working, but until now we can do very few things, very few practical things on the field. This topic, for those of you that are not familiar, is a topic that looks for feeding the animals based on its age and productive phase. It's worth to remember that usual diets are formulated with an excess of nutrients, and this is costing money. It's leading to the waste of those nutrients, and it's generating higher environmental pollution, mostly related to nitrogen and phosphorus. Could be, I don't know, 400 papers supporting this. The best summary right now, it's from a Spanish researcher that is working in Sherbrooke in Canada, Candido Pomar. We can decrease the cost of feed, and this is particularly important in this situation of very high feed cost, up to 10%, decreasing the nitrogen and phosphorus intake up to 25%, and its excretion up to 40%, and cutting the greenhouse gases emissions around 6%, which are very big numbers. This is affecting, as you can see on the right, the impact on the feed cost and the percentage of animals that are receiving an excess on those nutrients. In this case, in the upper part, you can see a chart showing the excess on gestating sows. A couple of examples. It's something that you can see how this is working, either in nursery or in growers and finishes. This system is, or these systems are already mixing two feeds. Let's say a richer diet and a more poor diet in terms of nutrients, and the system is mixing based on the sex, based on the weight, based on the health, based on many factors that you can define. Is mixing the two feeds so we can save money, we can feed better the animals to their needs, and cut up to 40% environmental emissions, mostly related to nitrogen, phosphorus, and a bit to greenhouse gases in a routine. This is not something that is just from a lab. It's something that is going on some of our customers' farms, and it's something that we expect that is growing rapidly. The second case is about digital biosecurity. It's interesting because the human factor explains a lot in biosecurity, because there's a difference between what people is doing and what they actually do, because vaccines, cleaning and disinfection, management, and general biosecurity protocols are applied by people, by farm staff, and it's something that I think that is widely accepted, that the best biosecurity protocol is useless if farm staff does not understand it. And this is something that in many cases happen because of lack of education, because of the language, because of the expertise, because of different reasons. So we need to put some objective data, because the first point, which is a survey, is always welcome, is the main tool that we have until now. For instance, the biocheck from University of Ghent, that is working well, but it's based on an opinion of the people. The second one, which is an audit, is good. You go to the farm and you review everything, whatever, but you need some objective data, some digital control of that. So this is meaning that we are moving from guessing to facts, and this is a working protocol together with the data. How can we generate this? For internal biosecurity, we use some emitters and readers, these beacons that you see on the left. We define the different parts of the farm, that they're positive to this disease or negative to this one, so we can define the proper movements to that, and we define the safe and the risk movements. If, for instance, a risk movement is a movement from a positive barn of a certain farm to a negative one, and we can see everything real time, how people is moving, who is doing what, and understand better how people can be the vectors of the diseases if they are not respecting the rules. If a web application, you need Wi-Fi, but you can work also without Wi-Fi, even in very isolated farms, is something that you can do. And with that, you can see many things and relate that to the PCR positives, the performance of the farm, etc. And for that is something that you can do it either if it's a neighbor farm or it's a farm that is in Southeast Asia or in Latin America. And this is a great opportunity for a vet working from home and understanding what is going on. But this is also working for external biosecurity control for visitors. In a couple of words, you define your health status and the structure of your system. I have this multipliers farm, the nucleus, the sows farms, the fattening barns, the cleaning and disinfection centers, the feed mill, the artificial insemination boards, whatever, and you define how high is on the structure. Based on this, you will be able to track either manually or link into the GPS of your truck or the vehicles that are visiting that, and you have kind of an electronic visitors book. But not only that, you are able to relate one visit to a farm visit to another farm visit and define if that can be done or not. For instance, a truck that is coming from the abattoir cannot go to a farm except if this truck is stopping on the cleaning and disinfection center. And this is something that the farm manager can know, can authorize, or can deny the access. So it's not only knowing, but it's avoiding certain risk because someone is not respecting the rules or whatever. So this is something that that until now we don't know. We need to work hard on with papers and visitors book with in a classical way, and this is something that putting our epidemiological knowledge on this, we can improve this control a lot. And the final one is about health monitoring and antibiotics control. This is interesting because during the last years, this has been run using mortality as the main key performance indicator. Other concepts like prevalence or incidence has not used. It's impossible to know what's going on because someone needs to write something, send something. This must be processed, and the information must be delivered. But prevalence, incidence, and other epidemiological indicators are very useful for the vets. We can rely and work together with farm staff, and they can be our eyes, our arms, even our ears on what is going on the farm using observational data. In this case, is something that with a simple app, people is using with a big button app. They record what they see. Everything is inside of the system, the vademecum, the medicines, the regression for estimation, the best way of the animals or whatever. So this is a thought for a person that is able to just write a WhatsApp. And if they see an animal with respiratory symptoms, it doesn't matter if it's for Mycoplasma, IPP, or whatever. They just recall that, and everything can be done real time, no matter where you are. This system is now working in Spain, Southern Europe, but also in Latin America and Asia. So with 5 to 10 minutes entry, you have real time information about the prevalence, the incidence, the treatments, the mortality, and most important, how antibiotics are being used, not the amount of antibiotics that you put on the farm and you divide that by the tons of meat produced. You know how every antibiotic is used, if it's overdosed, underdosed, if it's used against the right disease, etc. And this is something that can be used either in pigs or poultry or whatever. linking to climate control, CO2 and humidity and others. So you don't need to go to the farm. You don't need to be in front of the animals, since you can control many things and talk to farmer staff or other colleagues without being there, having a great information to make better decisions. So with this, I think that it's not difficult to come to some straight conclusions. The first one is that sustainability is impossible with digitalization. They are going the two together. To meet our objectives in producing this high quality and safe food, we need this digital transformation process in the livestock sector. Is the only way feasible. These initial pillars in the project, there will be more, but precision feeding, digital biosecurity, and real-time health and antibiotics control are there and can be used and are mature enough to be effective tools for the vets. In the past, we had a knife and gloves and whatever as tools for our work, or PCR and ELISA. Those tools will be there, but now we have new tools, digital tools that produce data for this. And I am very excited because we, the veterinarians, we have a better position than ever. And we can play a key role in the implementation of these digital tools. I think that no one is in a better position that we are, not only for the use of the tools, but also in the implementation of the protocols associated and the later use interpretation of the information generated. So I hope that these practical examples are useful to understand what we are doing right now, and we quite likely expect that keep on happening in the future. So thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you very much, because you gave a real practical example how to make use of digital livestock production application that we use on our mobile phones since already many years. So thank you very much. That was exactly what we were seeking, what we were trying to find out with this webinar. I would like to give the floor to Anna, because I know Anna, she has a couple of questions. So Anna.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for this very interesting presentation. I believe we need to use some innovative solution and edge-cutting technologies to improve our sustainability. And of course, the young veterinarian students are leaders in the new technologies. However, I believe that our potential is not well utilized at the moment. And therefore, I would like to ask you if there is something that the experienced veterinarians in your opinion could learn from the new generation, and how we can actually work hand in hand with you to develop those new solutions and implementation strategies.
Well, I think that your question is very pertinent. First of all, because sometimes we have in the farms, we have boomers like me. I'm a boomer, and we the boomers, we prefer a PDF, something that you can touch. But a millennial, a young guy, normally is going to accept easier a text message or a web application or whatever. So when distributing the information, sometimes that something that sometimes is forgotten, we need to understand who is the receptor of that, because sending the right information to the right person at the right time sounds very good, but this is not happening normally. In a way, we need to change, and we need to attract young people for this, and of course, technology, something that is more natural for them. Right now, and I apologize for the word, but there's no anymore hardware or equipment. There's no anymore software. It's a combination of both. It's the word is cyber physical system. It's an equipment normally that produces data, and these data are connected to some other things. So this is happening already in the farms, and technology never should be a barrier. If technology is a barrier, it's not a good technology. And part of the work of we as vets is to land this, to promote the smooth implementation of this, showing the benefits, coaching them, because we need to know a bit about that, and also we know the rules of health and biosecurity and some other things. So we are in the very middle of everything. So I think that we can reinforce our position, and the most important thing, make things happen in the real world, not something that sounds sexy and attractive and we're going to do this and that. No, if we help the people, and this is something that we have experienced, to work better, not to stay in the evening on the farms or every weekend or whatever, we put those guys on our side. And if we all play on the same team, things will happen.
Very clear. Anna, do you have some other questions?
To Carlos, or can I also ask the other speakers?
As you prefer.
Okay, I have one more question to other speakers as well. I'm happy it has been mentioned here the central role of veterinarians that we play in emergency preparedness and response, also regarding the climate change, the food safety. And unfortunately, veterinarians, medical doctors, environmental scientists, and especially policymakers tend to work very independently, which amplifies the risk that we have highlighted here. So how do we ensure well-coordinated multidisciplinary collaboration to research, to efficient prevention of emergencies and policy making? What would be your one advice?
Well, I think this is a question for everyone who wants to reply. Niels, David, Carlos, Gloria. Maybe Gloria, from your perspective, you have another
Yes,
kind of
thank you.
perspective.
Well, thank you, Anna, for this question. Yes, what we need, but it's not only in this field. What we need is really an interdisciplinary approach and working together, being able to collaborate, to understand what the scope are. Of a specific activity. So what I feel is that more platforms are needed, active platforms that are able to create synergies and get people together and get professionals together. There are different attempts. I can give you some example of what is happening, for instance, in Switzerland with respect to the food system. There are different platforms that are actually working on raising awareness and creating new synergies and collaboration. Now, what this platform should do is working actively in creating this collaboration and making things happen.
I have a question, a very straight question. Do we overproduce livestock? Do we overproduce meat? And do we overconsume meat in Europe? What do you think?
I can have a shot at that one, Fran. I'm a great believer in the less and better principles. I think if we're going to have sustainable farming, they still have to have income, but they have to be getting a price for food that is realistic. So I think there's no doubt that we in the developed countries eat too much red meat and milk. But the global demand is still being driven by developing middle classes, aspiring middle classes in developing countries, and we're not going to be able to slow that down. So I think it's all around more efficient production. I think if I can just very quickly pick up on Anna's question, which I thought was a great question, I think a lot of it is about getting common language and being less defensive. I think it's very easy to become defensive and vegans against meat eaters and vets against our wolf. It's so easy to get into a combative position, and I think we need to try and speak the same language and try and understand that we're all in this together. And really, as Gloria says, maybe have some platforms where we can do that in a non-threatening, non-argument. The whole thing about GWP star, for example, it's become very a little bit divisive. So I think it's a great question, and things like this webinar are a fantastic. Well, I see Simon's just put something. Simon Doherty, and Simon, I know, has done a huge amount to get this webinar and to get this dialogue going at European level. And things like this webinar are a great start for getting us all talking on the same language.
Niels, I saw you wanted to say something.
Yeah, possibly also contributing to this question, which is definitely quite nice. Well, on one hand, I personally do share the ideas of Gloria, because I think the world has become so complex and so much intertwined. Beyond what was formerly known only the village, we're now having a global village. So, and I think the more net connections that we are getting to know, the more we need to connect also with among ourselves. This means not only the vets between themselves, and also the vets with other professionals, because everybody's got his own view on the cup of tea, but nobody sees the entire cup. So this will be one thing. However, I also think one important factor is education regarding the people that surround us. It means, on one hand, let us say the farmers, which is our direct, let us say, clients, but also I think also the public, because if you look at at least the media as I see them here in Germany or in Europe, you always have this kind of, let's say, undergoing struggle between the idea of a perfect nature versus the need to feed people. And this, as Fran already mentioned, David also mentioned, we're getting into defense very easily. And so I think many of these kind of differences might be easier to be handled if also the general public know a little bit about more what are we actually doing. That means, and also why we're doing. That we're not having the idea that we're doing this out of a profit only, because no, there are other reasons to do so. This is so. I think a combination of association and communication education might be possibly one future path or part of the future path.
Very good. Anna, Carlos, you want to say something on this, maybe?
It's in a way it's complementary. Something that has not been a tradition at all in the vets as a profession, or probably on the federation, is that there are some topics that we were not comfortable with them. For instance, when we have a bit of mathematics or statistics or figures or whatever, we prefer a good necropsy or a good serum profile to analyze, or this kind of things. Not only for the old generations, but also for the new generations, it's good to put a bit, a hint, a touch of this knowledge, because without that, everything will be more difficult, and probably other professionals can take that space. That with this touch, we will be able to basically to run a better activity, to do a better job. So I don't want to forget the cherry on the cake, because could send our profession to one side or the other side, and the two sides are quite different.
Very clear. Wibke, you have been following the whole discussion, and you have been also putting up the presentation and also helping us very much. Do you have any questions for our speakers?
I think Maurizio wanted to add something to this.
Okay, sorry, Maurizio, go first.
Yes, Francesco, just very shortly. Okay, we are talking about the use of in general Internet of Things, digitalization of the monitoring, digitalization, the farm level, etc. And but also we have to consider the possibility to digitalize, you know, the activity in the slaughterhouse, for example, meat inspections. So we live in this world. I mean, but we are not using this technology at the farm level. So one question is, of course, there are a lot of resources, toolkits, how to use these platforms for digitalize the work, farm visit, for example. But we need to disseminate this knowledge. And I'm referring to the one key of the strategy of the FVE in the next years. One is embracing and disseminating technologies. So it's important to establish a connection with this fantastic group. They have been working in this field for years, and we can share information with them. And in the other aspect, we need to train the vets. We need to include all these topics, you know, biosensoring, monitoring animal welfare, because the main output is to increase the efficiency of the production, meat production. And then we can also you know, achieve the sustainability targets. So we need to include this in the undergraduates you know, courses, university courses, and also postgraduates. And then I think these webinars just highlight what is the role, the future role of the veterinary professions, and how to be well equipped with this new technology. And FEB, I think, based on this, can have a role in disseminating and in you know, in creating opportunity for the veterinary professions to use this fantastic technology. I think it's really, I mean, the presentation of Carlos just gave us, you know, what kind of beautiful opportunities we have to streamline, you know, our work and making the production more efficiency, and also to be more trustable to the publics, because our goal is just to use the best technology to guarantee sustainability, to guarantee animal welfare, animal health, and food safety. I mean, thank you for really your valuable contribution, and also David Black just giving, you know, and a large view how to use the technology in breeding to increase the efficiency and to reach the sustainability goals. Thank you very much. I mean, this is beautiful, really.
Wibke, please. I know you have a question.
Well, thank you, Mr. Carlos. You wanted to add on this?
Carlos, yeah.
Yes, I would use one of the statements of Gloria that I have noted in here, because about the holistic approach, and this is part of a service. In a way, these are solutions as a service. This is not something that you use once or whatever. For instance, a couple of practical examples. I am diagnosing in a routine mammitis, metritis, and agalaxia after farrowing because of the change in the intake pattern in lactating sows. But I'm doing from home, just taking a look to what is going on. Or I can interact with a farm manager in Costa Rica, telling him that the amoxicillin that he's using is overdosed and is not adequate for that E. coli K88 that he's having. So for me as a vet, this is a great privilege, and this is something that must be fluent. This is not something that anyone should see as, well, I am in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, I am not able to deal with this. Of course, yes, it's a minimum effort, and right now the good thing for us is that those techniques, those solutions are mature enough. Just 3, 4, 5 years ago, probably this would be a terrible nightmare under a practical point of view. So I think that this role of not only, first we need to understand, first we need to know, but we are going, the European Commission has defined this, farm advisors. The key are the farm advisors, the people that is in between, telling the farmers, telling the producers, telling the policymakers, this is working, this is not, it's a different way of working, it's a different mindset. And I think that the payback with a very minimum, not very minimum, but with a minimum and acceptable effort, we can do more than ever. Of course, we need that, and we need to I would say, to make customers and other colleagues in love about this because of the potential that we have in here. We all live based on our opinions. Now with this, we can state better opinions, more funded and more robust, and see the impact quite fast instead of guessing that we're doing well. So every change, human nature is conservative. Every change is an effort, but I think that this change, if we as vets or as a federation promotes 2 or 3 ways of doing in a smooth way, we can do better things than ever and faster than ever. I'm pretty sure.
Thank you, Carlos, for these passionate words. Now it's your time, Wiebke.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank everybody for the fabulous contributions. It was an amazing opportunity. And I think we have drawn the conclusion that there's so much to do, and the veterinarians still are able to contribute in a collaborative effort to this, in bettering, improving, but maybe as well in downscaling some part of the needs. So this is something where this to gain sustainability in the livestock production. So there's certainly a point to make on this.
I would like to ask you, this is a very first webinar. It was a broad one. We just deepened a bit the issues on sustainability, breeding techniques, and also digitalization. I have a last question for Carlos. Carlos, do you make use of veterinary telemedicine, digital examination of animals? How do you cope with that?
Well, first, when I go to a farm, traditionally once in a while, could be once every 2 weeks, once per month, or whatever. This is not, I would say, enough to really understand. I tried to explain before that we have farm staff that, with a minimum training in terms of using this, they can be my eyes, my arms, and my ears there. If they record properly and in an easy way, in 5 minutes, like writing a WhatsApp, the observations that they do, respiratory, enteric, or whatever. They tell me, I have used these products this way, or they can send me a picture or a small video of the necropsy or whatever. I can do many things just with that. But the key thing is that this guy, this person, this lady is happy with that. Because if they're not happy, human nature, it always works the same way. They will put it on a corner and they will find a way not to do it.
But I have the same question. Sorry, Carlos, we're running out of time. I have the same question for David. David, you also a veterinary practitioner. Do you make use of telemedicine, digital examination?
It's certainly became very popular during COVID, particularly for the small animal side and the equine side. Not so much on the farm. I think that side of it is more used by the vets, sharing knowledge around. So we've got very active WhatsApp groups going the whole time with vets sharing clinical. So it's been a great advantage that way. I think for us, we still want to be with our clients as much as we can and getting as much face-to-face contact so that we're getting the messages across. Because I think the whole thing about sustainability is it's not, as Carlos says, it's not a one-off. It's not a topic by itself. It's a culture. It's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. And I think by working with our clients and asking them what's important to them, I think helps develop that. Because it's not hard to actually go on a farm and say, you know what, tell me what's really worrying you, what's concerning you, and then when they understand so that's not so easy to do remotely. I think you can do one-off clinical cases remotely, and you can do data and herd health remotely, but I think actually getting a culture going, it's hard to do that unless it's face to face. For me, anyway.
Okay, we are now ending up our webinar. I would like to have one sentence from each of you for the next webinar, if we're gonna plan another webinar, what kind of issue, what kind of topic would you like to investigate from your side, also from the side of sustainability, from the outcomes of the COP26? One sentence, and I start with Maurizio.
Yeah, I think I would reinforce the communications with the stakeholders. So our role in terms of sustainability. So we have to be direct. We have to be honest. What we could really achieve, because at the end, the consumers, the public need trustful information. So we have to work on on optimizing the communication. Communication is very important.
Very good. Gloria, please.
Yes, from my side, I think that would be really interesting to work on how to create interdisciplinary knowledge and collaboration among different professionals and sectors. So cross collaborations can be really interesting.
Very good. Niels.
Well, one single sentence. The insects are coming, and we vets need to be prepared to do so, to cope with them.
Carlos, please.
Short sentence. First, digitalization never should be a barrier, and we, the people, and in particular we, the vets, could be the cornerstone of this digital transformation process in livestock.
And the last word to David.
I can't do one. I would agree with Maurizio on communication. I'd agree on collaboration. I think it's absolutely key. But I also would go back to Anna's point about the sustainability of the profession itself, and engaging with the younger generations and understanding. As Carlos says, I'm a baby boomer as well. We need to understand the Gen Ys and the millennials and work with them.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank you all. It was a very good webinar as a starter. And I would like to make a final remark. Anna, what would you want to say? Because you are one of the youngest here.
Thank you very much. As my final conclusion, I would first of all like to thank you that I was invited here on behalf of the new generation. Everybody here mentioned education, training, and in the definition of sustainability, you all mentioned future generations. And therefore, I would like to ask you for the future to not only passively educate the new generation, but to meaningfully involve us in the action towards improving sustainability and decision-making process. We are here ready.
Oh, that's a very good truth. I mean, it's not only a matter of education or teaching, but also involving them, engaging them, and take their hands and come with me in the practice. Come with me on farm. I want to show you. And yeah, I remember when I started my career, I didn't know anything of veterinary medicine, but then I went on farm with my father and said, "Look, this is a farm, and this is the stuff you will do if you want to become a vet." So I started to stay close to the cattle or to the sheep. Sheep were my first animals I addressed. And then I said there was a lot of dirty and a lot of blood everywhere, a lot of nasty things to do. And I said, whoa, it's a lot, but I like it. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to all. Thank you to Rens for welcoming us and welcoming all the speakers. And I will make a short report with Anna and Wibke. I will certainly upload your presentation if you give me the authorization on the FEV website. So all the materials will be available for the speakers. And I hope that we will make a follow-up of this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.